Scott, I understand you are a fellow real estate investor. I'm still very, very early on in my real estate investor journey. But most people, when they buy a property for investment purposes, they buy it under an LLC, right? So let's say I own an LLC, the LLC buys the property. I believe that you have a much better way or a superior way of doing it. Tell us a little bit more about how you use LLC structures, series LLCs, land trusts, and how should one go about to set it up in a better way?
Yeah, so just there's two things you want to look at for asset protection purposes, which is why you're setting up LLCs or trusts typically. Is what you're looking for is a way to protect all the assets from lawsuits. So that way, if somebody sues Gabe, they can't get to anything Gabe owns, right? We don't want them to be able to get to Gabe's cash, his stocks, any of his real estate. And if Gabe owns that in his personal name, then Gabe gets into a car accident. And now all of a sudden, Gabe's broke, right? Because everything that he had got taken from him. So that's why you need to think about putting together the proper asset protection structure. Inside of the proper structure, you want to think about not just the protection itself, but also about how to create anonymity. Because one of the ways you're able to stop the lawsuits before they start, and also just have some additional privacy in your life where people can't find out what you own on the public record, is to use different types of land trusts or anonymity trusts that are really easy to put in place. They don't require any maintenance. They're really cheap to create and to use, but they give you good anonymity, and they also stop lawsuits before they start. Because if it looks like Gabe doesn't own anything, what do we want to sue Gabe? No, we don't want to sue Gabe, because then we just sued Gabe, but Gabe's broke. What are we going to do? Take Gabe's paper bag? That's just pointless. We don't want to do that. We want Gabe to have a big old pot of money for us to go after. So hide everything behind the trust. And then additionally, we layer in with that and combine with it, typically the use of a series LLC, because a series LLC will allow us to essentially create an infinite number of LLCs for free. And so what that means is then we can compartmentalize every single asset that Gabe owns. So that way, if they sue Gabe, they're like, well, Gabe doesn't look like he owns anything. It's all hidden behind these trusts and companies that Gabe's name doesn't appear on, all right, and it's attached to. And I say, well, we'll go ahead and sue Gabe anyway and see what we can find. And he says, well, shoot, it actually turns out everything that Gabe gets money from with all these investments, it's actually owned by this LLC structure, so we can't get to any of that. Like, dang it. All right, so we swung and a miss. Like on that one, we just wasted $5,000 to $10,000 to find that out. I says, well, what happens if somebody tries to sue like one of the properties Gabe owned? Well, grandma fell to the stairs at one of your properties, right? So she sues, and the insurance company says, we're not going to cover you. So what can grandma get in that case? Well, one, grandma's kind of discouraged because she can't find out anything else that Gabe might own. But that one property that Gabe has is compartmentalized in its own individual child series of the series LLC, which means at most Gabe's going to lose one property, right? Which is recoverable from. Take that in comparison to the fact that if Gabe doesn't have anything, then grandma or whoever knows the full extent of the assets, right? And they know where they're all at, and they know if they sue you, they can take all of it, right? Because it's all held in one name. It's all in one bucket. And so you need to bucketize and camouflage those assets, and then find a cost-effective way to do it, and a way that's manageable for your accounting and your bookkeeping and your banking and all of those things. And that's what we specialize in as real estate investors that also work in tax and legal. But the key piece is you're going to want to have to form it in a state that has charging order protection, because your LLCs that are formed in states that don't have charging order protection are really weak, because they will protect you if somebody, grandma falls through the staircase and she sues, and your LLC owns that house. That's great. She can't come after Gabe. But if Gabe got into a car accident and they sued Gabe, they could take his LLC, right? So that's why you have to have charging order protection, is because you need both protection from the internal attacks inside of the entity and the external attacks where they go after you and then try to go after the ownership of the entity.
Interesting. I had no idea that different states handle that differently.
Yeah, that's why like the state you form in is actually really interesting. So That's why you shop for, quote unquote, shop for LLCs and different kinds of trusts in different states, because you can form them in the states that have the good laws that you want. But then because of the US Constitution, the other states have to recognize the laws of the other state. So it's a way you can shop for the most advantageous laws and then use it anywhere else in the country.
So I buy it in my personal name with my mortgage, and then I transfer it into the land trust. And the land trust is owned by the series LLC, which is owned by the parent LLC.
That's right. Yeah.
And I want to set up the LLC in Texas, Nevada, or Wyoming, I believe, were the 3 states you mentioned.
Yeah, or Delaware.
Or
Personally,
Delaware.
out of all those, I actually like Texas because Texas doesn't have any annual fees and doesn't have any franchise taxes until you're making over $1 million a year, which you're almost never doing. If in real estate investing, you just don't make that kind of money, like in rents, until you're massive, right? So so it's a little cheaper and easier. And then you can have any of those LLCs too can also be owned by a trust, which means that you can actually own any of these LLCs anywhere in the country anonymously. It's not just Wyoming. Like a lot of people are like, oh, I want to use a Wyoming LLC because I want to own my LLC anonymously, right? Like, well, you can actually just accomplish that with a trust. And then if you use an attorney as a nominee person, either like a nominee trustee or a nominee representative of the trust or the entities, then the attorney actually signs all the paperwork, does all the filing, uses their law firm address for everything. So now your name doesn't appear on anything.